have dropped to the lowest level in over a year and a half. That means if you bought your home or refinanced in the last 3 years, you could be saving hundreds of dollars every month. Lower your rate, lower your monthly payment, even kick that pesky PMI to the curb. And get this, you can skip 2 full months of mortgage payments. But that's not all. Fellowship Home Loans just rolled out something incredible. Their very own HELOC and lines of credit. Approval in just 5 minutes. Money in your account in as little as 4 days. It's the easiest system you've ever used. You can do it yourself online. Whether you want to pay off bills, tackle a home project, cover education, or even a wedding, Fellowship Home Loans makes it simple to leverage the money that's already sitting in your house. Just go to fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G, fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G, or call 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending guided by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, DBA Fellowship Home Loans, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 819382.
British police said this week that they've disrupted a criminal network suspected of smuggling some 40,000 stolen mobile phones from the UK to China over the past year.
An unidentified policeman describes what happens when the stolen phones are recovered.
Once each phone's recovered, it's individually resealed, rebagged.
The operation was launched in 2024 after a box containing about 1,000 iPhones destined for Hong Kong was discovered at a warehouse near Heathrow Airport.
That is Charles de la Decima reporting. The Big Ten is considering a private capital investment that could bring in upward of $2 billion. The Athletic confirmed this week that the deal would likely include sponsorship and bargaining rights, with the money to be distributed among the 18 Big Ten members. A new entity for those rights called Big Ten Enterprises would be created. Breaking news at townhall.com. Rich Thomason reports there's a serious risk of flash flooding in the southwestern U.S. This weekend as a tropical storm heads inland from the Pacific Ocean.
Bands of rain left over from Tropical Storm Priscilla are forecast to drench much of Arizona, as well as parts of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, and Southern California. Experts warn people to keep away from canyons and desert washes that can flood miles downstream from where it rains. Rich Thomason, Washington.
First Lady Melania Trump says she's been working directly with Vladimir Putin to reunite children displaced from their families during the war in Ukraine.
8 children have been rejoined with their families during the past 24 hours. Each child has lived in turmoil because of the war in Ukraine.
President Trump hand-delivered Melania's letter about those children to Putin at their recent summit in Alaska. More of these stories at Town Hall.
Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel.
Chicago defense attorney Mark Schieblo has co-authored the book titled DUI Jury Trial, which is a true story of a DUI case that he defended. The accused was an Illinois truck driver arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. This book contains facts about the case from the date of the arrest up to the jury's verdict, and this nonfiction novel also includes the transcripts from the jury trial itself. The book DUI Jury Trial is now available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
Hi, this is the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Paul Burvitt and Mike Tooman. Today, it's our special co-host Marla Mutis. We're on every day, noon to 1 on WRMN 1410, the Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming live on WRMN1410.com. The studio phone number voice is 847-931-1410. Or the text number is 505-926-1410, or contact us through Facebook comments at WRMN 1410. Okay, today we're going to do something kind of interesting. Now, we're generally a veterans and a kind of a law enforcement government show, but today we're going to talk about something kind of different. We're going to talk, since it's the end of summer, early fall, we're going to talk about things that are vintage Chicago, okay? And if anybody wants to call in or anybody wants to text us, we'd be glad to answer your questions, okay? So what we're going to talk about is things like old-time vintage Chicago, some in the way distant past, some in the more recent past, and maybe some that still relating to today. Okay, the first thing I'd want to talk about is the vast amount of amusement parks that were in the Chicago area. And the first one I used to hear about was from my parents, and and they actually wrote a novel similar to it about a crime that was there. It was called White City, and it was a famous amusement park in the area of Grand Crossing, and it was from 1905 to the early 1950s, and it was kind of like an area that was it was on 63rd and State Parkway Gardens, all right, and it had it was a famous amusement park. It had roller coasters, tilt-a-whirls, and everything that was brand new at the time. And the thing that's unique about it is it was the first time where the Goodyear blimp was used commercially. So they rolled the blimp out and then they inflated it and they used it to transport people back and forth around the city of Chicago. And unfortunately, on July 21st, 1919, it was also a crash that involved the death of several people. It was 3 on the blimp, and it was near Grant Park. So it hit the Illinois Trust and Savings Bank, and 10 people at the bank were unfortunately killed. But it was a huge thing. It was, nationally it was known. It came in the shadow of the 10 years after the first World's Fair and before the second one. Now, the other thing is probably more familiar to a lot of people. It's Riverview. Now, I myself never went there, but I knew where it was because we would go to see my grandparents and we would go up north. And that it was at Belmont and Western, okay? And it opened actually 1 year before the White City amusement park. And Riverview was like the destination to go to if you were young or, families. And it was just a wonderful place. It had the fun house, the bobs, and various roller coasters, and the tilt-a-whirl. Now, it was on 74 acres, and it was open from 1904 to 1967. Okay. Yeah, your dad went there. So did my parents. And it's kind of famous because there's they had these, you sat on kind of like a swing system, but they were parachutes, and they were called the Parachutes. And they actually, the Beach Boys made a song relating to that. And so it was kind of famous for the song that they made about it. Now, the other one was something that I think you went to and I went to. It was Adventureland. And Adventureland actually is in, I believe it's Dundee now. And it was a famous amusement park that's actually not too far. When we go down to the radio station, it's actually a little bit north of there when you get off of the expressway. And they had various rides and things like that. And there were they had these cars that were amphibious, and they were called amphicars. And they would go into a little pond. Kind of neat because that was people's first exposure to these cars, and they came out in the early 1960s where you could actually drive into the water. And I was actually on that. That was kind of cool. And the cars came in various colors. They were bright red, yellow, green, blue, white, and they would go one after another, and they'd go into this pond, and then you'd get to drive a car into the water. The car was made to drive on the highway, but it was also made to go in the water with propellers and rudders. And there's actually societies for Amphicar, and that was one of the things. And then they actually had a thing where there was a building that would be set on fire, and then you would shoot water into it, and it was just kind of just like
a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun, and a lot of kids have great memories of that. And then nearby, actually, I think probably across the street was Santa's Village, and that was kind of cool because you could go there, and it was even in the summer, it would be a Santa theme. But what was neat about Santa's Village was they had an ice rink, and they used to do shows, kind of like the things on ice now. And you could walk in there, and it would be, it could be hot outside, and it would be really cool and very nice. It would be very refreshing to walk into there. So Santa's Village was like a wonderful thing. Did you have any memories of Santa's Village?
I'm not sure I went to Santa's Village, but I did go to the next one, which is Kittyland, and that was a lot of fun.
We actually went there with the Cub Scouts, actually, so that was kind of neat. Now we're going to talk about Kittyland. There were two Kittylands that I'm familiar with. I think there were actually more, but the first one was in Melrose Park, and it was like on North Avenue. Okay, and like I think it was First Avenue, and it had they had a big pole with kids on it, and it was kind of
decorative,
a very interesting destination for people to go to. And then the other one that I'm more familiar with is the one that was on 95th and Pulaski, near the south side of Chicago. And that initially it was called the Green Oaks Playland, okay? And it was run initially by Michael Mickey Doolin, and that opened up in 1946. And what I remember the most about that is they had these cars, okay, that were on tracks. And you would sit on the car, and it would have a mechanism that you would crank with chains, and you would go all around the park. And it had switches and turnoffs, and then they had the tilt-a-whirl, as a lot of places have. And then they had this thing that looked like a Flash Gordon type spaceship, and they were I think they were fiberglass, and I think two people could sit in it. And it went around in a circle, but it would go from being you would sit in it to where you would almost go at a 45-degree angle as you went on this circular thing, and it was just a wonderful place.
Wonderful memories.
Yeah, to go to, especially if you were a kid in the neighborhood, you could take the bus there, or if you live nearby in Chicago, Evergreen Park, Oak Lawn, you could actually walk there if you wanted.
Did you like concessions they had?
They did. They had you could get pizza, cotton candy, hot dogs, hamburgers, and it was like
it was nice. It was nice to go outside and just experience the rides and to be with other kids, and it was just a fond memory. A lot of fond memories that I have, actually.
It was fun. It was, yeah, and you could take your thoughts away from regular, normal, everyday things. So that was kind of neat. And then the one that I went to when I was a little older was a place called Playland. And that was at 79th and LaGrange. And this was open from 1950 to 1979. And it became the Sterling Estates Mobile Home Park later on. Now, they had the Mad Mouse there, and they had a thing like with you could do archery there, and they had different things, and it was kind of unique because it had some of the vendors from Adventureland and some of the vendors from Riverview after it closed. So it was kind of like the last amusement park locally before, Great America opened up and things like that.
Chicago.
And we used to go there when I was in high school. And very often I went to Bogan High School. The kids would talk about what they had been there the night before, and just kind of a local fun area. It was like they had like things where you could like guess your weight and bang the gong thing to see how high it would go, and it was cool. Now the other thing that was big in the area was, I don't know if you ever went there, but we went there a lot. It was initially called the Free Fair, and it was on the park at 47th and Damon on the west side of the street, the northwest side of the street. And it was kind of a big thing in the back of the yards. And then it actually wasn't free. So they changed it to the Fun Fair, and then they later changed it to the back of the yards fair. But what was really cool there was, I remember, it's kind of funny. I don't think they do this now, but you would buy a chance and they would give you a ping pong ball. And then they would have these little glass containers with colored water in them. And there would be goldfish in there. And
in the water?
Yeah. And what would happen is, if you threw the ping pong ball, and very often it would bounce, and then if it went into one of the glass containers, you got to keep that goldfish. So they would give you the goldfish with that little container. And then, it was kind of a wild thing, but, I remember, and then they had cotton candy, and then they had other chances where they would call them pull tabs, and you'd buy so many of them, and they'd have a trailer set up, and then they'd have shelves on it, and they would have like housewares or toys or stuffed animals or radios. And if you pulled it and it had a certain number, you got to pick a prize from that level, right? And then they would have, and you put them, took it out of a jar, and these were like old time, ideas and things that people would have. And then, of course, Marla mentioned it. One of the last ones was the first indoor amusement park that I ever remember.
Old Chicago.
Was Old Chicago, yeah. It was off of I-55.
Bolingbrook. It was in the center of an actual shopping mall. And what I remember, I think the last time I was there was probably actually 1970, around early 70s. And it would be lit like sunset, kind of darker, and you would walk around the mall, and then you could see in the middle there'd be people on rides and everything. I didn't go on, I think I went in there once or twice, but I would go to the mall and I would just see it. It looked fun.
There were shops in there that would have like candles and little knickknacks and things like that. And in the center, they had this roller coaster.
Right.
And then they had the Tilt-A-Whirl, and then they had other smaller roller coasters. And then, when I went there, I was mostly when I was in high school. So it was like from like 73 to 77. I remember we had a day off of school, me and a friend of mine, we drove out there, and we actually saw a guy that we went to high school with. He was working there, and they had these, it was the first time they had this shooting gallery with lasers, and he was working at the turning the thing on and stuff like that. So it was kind of wild. And then there was another thing I remember, and this is for the North Side people. Amlings, the floral place, they had the haunted house, and that was at First and North Avenue. And I remember it kind of later where they had like a little trailer where you'd walk in and go, but they actually had the Amling's Haunted House on First and North Avenue. Now, in doing different research on this, there's actually some postcards out there that relate to another area. Was the Olson Rug Factory Gardens. Did you ever know about that?
No, where was that?
That was located at Diversey and Pulaski.
Okay.
And it was like a green space, but they were like gardens that they would have and they would maintain. And it was done, by the corporation to beautify the neighborhood. But it was like it was kind of neat, that they spent so much time doing that, and it was part of their community activities for the people.
Was there headquarters over there?
Yes, it was right next to the headquarters, okay. And it was kind of a neat place from now it was gone way before I could ever go see it, but it was kind of nice to think that a corporation would be able to do something like that. So any your thoughts on any other type of amusement things?
I just think of church carnivals or different things I went to as a kid or teenager, and they had the same thing what you were mentioning. I never had an opportunity to win a goldfish, but we would play the games and then choose something, pull a tab. It was a lot of fun. It's a good memory. I was going to ask you, Paul, why do you think these things all went away?
I don't know. I don't know if it's because of the people going to the internet or people, but people did more activities outside.
In the neighborhood outside.
I know that you went there. They had a big, wonderful, maybe you could even speak to it because I think you went there more than I did, that plaza by Tallman Bank on 55th and
that's a summer fair.
Yeah, but that was kind of a perennial thing, right? And then they had that Franz Bentler. Right. He was kind of like a local band leader, violin player, and they would Tallman Bank would put it on, and then there were I went to the that St. Nick's Fair several times. Did you ever go to that?
I did go once. I think that what we used to have was more community sponsored activities, and then also more, like you mentioned, little, I don't want to use the word pop-up, but they were kind of like pop-ups where they would just be out there for a short period of time and people would, know about it and go out there, especially with children. A lot of these are children activities too. I think when I was in high school, they opened up something more on a larger scale, which would be like Great America. Which is still open, right?
Right.
Yeah, but you're not seeing these things. I mean, there is one right now. I think I saw something in Bridgeview. I think I saw something near Oak Brook, not in Oak Brook, but near that way, maybe DuPage County. You see these little carnival things pop up for a few days.
Well, I think
not long, not the whole summer.
I think they're actually using them lately as a way for villages and towns to support their local charities, because I know that they have a lot of neighborhoods in the summer and the fall have these carnivals, if not churches. I mean, our church used to have it. I remember at that St. Nick's one, it was kind of fun, and I actually won a tennis bag, where it was a duffel bag, and then I had it for years, and you could put a tennis racket in it, and it was like you zipped it up, and it was just kind of neat. There were awesome memories, that you would go to with your friends or your family, or you'd meet your godparents there, and it was just a lot of fun, And then they'd have funnel cakes at these things and corn dogs. Sometimes you never had a chance to have anything like that, and you'd have these corn dogs, and it'd be kind of awesome experience, you know.
I think it'd be a structured way for people to bring out the family and just have a good time. My high school used to have actually a big fair every summer too. Some of it was fundraising and some of it was just to engage the community. And, you know, there's some for profit, obviously, too. I don't know back then what it was used for, but probably to run the school. Right? But yeah, these were, you're bringing back a lot of, I didn't go to all of these. I recall a good part of them from what you mentioned, but I don't see that as much now. And I think that there's a little bit of a loss that kids are missing.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a lack of being outside and in nature and a fun group activity and
not too far away.
Right, and a lot of excitement. So, you know, I think we're always happy about that.
It's kind of like doing the apple or pumpkin picking, right? But it's
or you know, or blueberry picking or strawberry picking, right? You know, and then that too leads to other things too. Like there's areas where you can go pumpkin picking. I know this is a popular part of the season now with Halloween and Thanksgiving coming, and they have that Bankston's farm, you know, where people go there and they have a little petting zoo and they have little amusement park rides. And, you know, it's sad that, you know, some of these things are very seasonal, you know, and then but when we were kids, they were more all year round except for the winter, you know.
They were more community building, I think, too.
Right. And you know, they were it was just like a different, quieter time then. And you know, I mean, they've had festivals and carnivals and, you know, I mean, even, you know, you could even go in and talk about the different, you know, circuses. You know, I went to the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, and I know you went to the circus with your father. And, you know, then there's, after Ringling Brothers, there was Circus Vargas, you know, and then, you know, but then, you know, people started saying that the animals were mistreated. So then they started doing more things with acrobatics and things like that. But, you know, I remember, and I've been watching a lot of videos about traveling in the Midwest, but I remember I was with my parents. It was around summertime, and we had driven out to Rock Island, and we were and the circus had come to town, and the elephants were they were walking down the street in Rock Island. They were going to where they were from their train cars, and the elephants all walked in a row, and then they would hold the elephant in front of its tail with its you know, snout. And it was kind of, you know, I mean, it was something to see. And I could imagine, you know, for our grandparents and the other people, that was a real big thing. And then I remember when the circuses would come to town, they would have those train cars in the train sidings, and you'd see these big, long train cars that would say Ringling Brothers or whatever. And it was just a different time. And it was something that's gone, but, you know, we shouldn't forget it. Now, in terms of transitioning now, I'd like to transition from the amusement parks to something else, childhood memories. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is that Dispensa's Castle of Toys. Mm-hmm. You went there, right? What do you remember about it?
Well, when I went there, I think it's near Oakbrook Terrace. When I went there, I was a little bit older, but it was such an inviting outdoor building. You know, the building, it was just like a castle. I got my parents to take me. I might have been about 12. I might have even been 13. So I was a little bit older than the average person, you know, the average kid going there. But I remember going in the building, and then it was just, you know, racks and racks of toys. And I just, you know, it was just an experience, and it a fond memory that I have. Remember, back then we did not have an internet. We did not have, you know, you had catalogs mostly to look at your toy picks unless you were going into the stores. So, I mean, for a youngster to go into a building like that, it's sort of like the former Marshall Field concept. You know, you go in and you see, wow, everything's here. You know, so it's I don't know how profitable a business like that was. It's not in business now, I believe, right? So at the time, though, the market would command that, you know, people would just come in and select something. They would come for miles, I believe. Now we have a little more options with catalog and the internet, and in small, you know, big box stores are promoting products too. So it's a little bit more different than when I was growing up.
Now, I never got a chance to go there, although we saw it from the highway several times. And I know that they did also have an amusement park inside, a little amusement park, which I would have, you know, wished I could have gone to see. I know.
We were a little older, though, when that came about.
Right. It started in 1967, and it went to about 1985. So it was around about 18 years, you know, and it was on, it was a 5-acre operation, you know, but it was on 12.5 acres. And, you know, I remember seeing it from the road, and, you know, all the different people that, you know, talked about going there. And I remember the commercials on the television and the radio, and, you know, it's just a different experience, you know. So I wished I would have gone there.
We had our, you know, in our neighborhoods, we had our toy stores. I actually, when I was growing up, had a dime store on my block. And then when that closed, there was one couple blocks north of me. And then, you know, there were some, you know, they would pop up, sort of like, if any of you remember Woolworths, they would pop up in different neighborhoods. Again, you know, some of this we're talking about was before we were driving, so we can only go by, you know, what we did with our parents, or we did when our friends when we were a little bit older.
Well, that was, you know, this was like, in some ways, and we'll get into it, shopping malls were just starting, but this was like pre-shopping malls. Now, like the thing that I remember, and I know you remember this too, was a place called Bargain Town, and it was called, it had a red and white, and it was it had a top hat guy, and he would say Bargain Town. And the one that I remember the most was the one that was on 63rd and Cicero, and it's now a place called Continental Sales now, but the building's the same. And then there was one at 9200 West North Avenue. And then there was one at 3041 East 92nd Street. And then there was one at 3868 North Lincoln. And then there was one at 2027 North Milwaukee.
What did Bargain Town have? Just toys or everything?
It was kind of like, it kind of had like pool type stuff and other things.
Yeah.
And it had everything. You know, the thing I remember the most were it used to suspend the toy or the item from the ceiling on pegboard, and it would be like wired to the thing, and it would be above it, and then you would get to see the thing as it would look, you know, out of the box, assembled. And I remember that it was just really neat. My parents got me, I had the G.I. Joe with the sled that would be, it would go in the water and bob. And it came out the same time as that James Bond film, Thunderball. And it was kind of like that. And then I remember seeing, and I wish I had it now, they had the first time they had a woman, G.I. Joe, she was a nurse. And they were selling it one time for $1 or something like that. I think those things are going for $1,200 now, mint in the box. And then there was a toy that I always wanted. It was I think it was a Ren something Wii or something like that. It was like kind of like a combination between a car and an airplane. It was a gas-powered hovercraft that would work on cables, and it would fly by itself around. Now, my parents got me a Cox Stuka dive bomber, and that was like really cool because it was a big model and it flew, but it flew on a wire control system. Okay, and it was kind of neat, but we had problems getting it started. So we took it back, and I was actually living over there by St. Nick's, and we took it back there because we were flying it at Marquette Park, and we couldn't get it started, and the manager put it up on the counter, and then he started it, and you know how they would have the public announce it? He would let it run so it attracted attention. So everybody in the store ran to the front of the store to see what was going on. And then they sold a lot of different stuff that he used the fact that we couldn't get it started as a way to sell some items. And he got it going, and it started, and women were coming up and saying, "My son would like that. What aisle is that in?" And then they, it was just a different time. But like I said, they suspended things from the ceiling. And the only time I remember seeing that was in a hobby shop near Belmont Avenue, and I think it was North Avenue, and they had Plasticville houses like that suspended, and he had the whole thing. So it was kind of a neat concept. And then the funny thing is the bargain towns, and I know you know this because we've talked about this. The bargain towns became Toys R Us.
Oh, okay.
And there was a Toys R Us that opened after the bargain town closed on 63rd and Cicero. They opened up a Toys R Us on about
Fort City.
Well, 79th or so, and Cicero. It was in Burbank, Illinois. And I remember when that opened, and that was kind of neat. Now you have some fond memories of that. What is the memory you have of the Toys R Us?
Well, when Toys R Us opened, I was more so. What year did you say it opened?
I think it was in the 70s, maybe 72 or 73.
Okay, I was more so at the point getting gifts for younger kids, relatives or whatever. But I do remember going to Toys R Us. We actually knew one of my friends actually worked at Toys R Us years ago. But I think one thing I wanted to mention was, and if I haven't been clear about this, there were different models of shopping. There was the model of, as I mentioned, the catalog. There was the model of the dime stores, and they'd actually have pretty good quality items. Then the model came a little larger, which is, you haven't mentioned Steinberg Baum, have you?
No.
That was on 63rd, a little east of Pulaski.
And there was another one on 95th, a little east of Western.
Okay. Well, I wasn't driving.
That was a big one.
Okay, I didn't know that one. But this was like an extension of the 5 and dime stores, and it would be maybe about 4 or 5 times larger than the dime stores. And so therefore, you would go in there and see a toy department that was just a lot of fun to go to, because you would have, maybe it's like three dime stores or drug stores. And then in the mid to late 70s, I think the model changed or expanded, maybe that's a better word, that you would see your toy departments in stores like Venture and Kmart, and what are some other stores? It would be a big, I want a medium, I don't know if those are called big box. Are they big box?
Discount stores.
Discount stores. And they would have just like they'd have a clothing department or a cosmetics department or whatever, they would have a candy department. They would actually have a toy department. And, and they would be able to obviously offer more things. You started, I see your list here, Paul, and you mentioned Marshall Fields. I actually have, pictures from when I'm 6 months old meeting Santa Claus downtown at Marshall Fields. And, that was a concept in and of itself where you would be able to get, items that were from other countries that may be handmade or whatever. And it was just I was obviously upscale to what we were getting in the neighborhoods, but the neighborhoods had a lot of good things too. And that I miss. Another big mall, you mentioned a mall. The mall concept came about when we were maybe in our, starting our teens or whatever, maybe a little younger. And you would be able to see, again, stores like Montgomery Ward's and Sears and I guess J.C. Penney and a little bit Spiegel offer toys and promotions that maybe you wouldn't have in your neighborhood. I think we've moved to a larger direction, good or bad. That I see a lot of people that are buying these products are going to a larger store like a Walmart or Costco or
big box.
I guess you call them big box. And even your grocery store model has changed. Some of your larger grocers are incorporating actually clothing or toys or that for kids. But and then you're also seeing another model where I'll use the word company. Companies are creating experiences for kids. One example would be American Girl, where you have a high quality product and an experience. I think some of them, you can eat there, and it's just like a little mini Disneyland. If I'm correct,
it's a shopping and yet a fun destination.
Yeah, like
they have food there and things like that. And
yeah. I'm going to use the word experience. So it's kind of a little upscale to what I remember with old Chicago, and that where you would not just go for the rides or the product or whatever. They would also have, a place I think you can get a meal too and buy clothing, and it's kind of a unique concept. And
it's really interesting that how you mentioned that and how times have changed. I too went to Marshall Fields and especially around Christmas time, they had a toy department, and you could see this in old time TV shows and things like that, and even an episode of The Twilight Zone about Christmas, Santa Claus guy. They would have these, and one of my favorite Christmas movies is it's called A Holiday Fair, where a guy worked in a toy store trying to get money to go west. He was going to build boats. He was out of the service, but they had departments where, I actually, because I've been involved in model trains and stuff, I have friends that actually used to work seasonally at these stores like Marshall Fields and Woolworths and Penny's and stuff like that. And they would repair things for, they were a Lionel service station. Mm-hmm. And you could bring your Lionel train there to be factory fixed. And I have friends of mine that did that many times, and they worked there, and that was a way of life, and then when you would look at the box on Lionel, it would tell you New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. They had a place at the Merchandise Mart, but Marshall Fields was like the key. They were like the big department store, that people, they would get, I know they would get things from Europe directly from there. They would have big tables, and then they would have like women's hosiery and stuff that came from Paris and things like that. It was like truly an experience. It was like something, unique that you would remember. And even, I want to get into it a little bit later, but even the local stores had that. like Goldblatt's had that, and Neisner's had that, and these were all stores that you could get things that you normally couldn't get. And, like you were talking about the catalogs. The thing that I remember the most, and I remember this,
getting the Christmas catalog.
When the Christmas catalog came, I'd come home from school and I'd look at the Christmas catalog. And, at first we only got it from Sears. And then we got it from Penny's. Ward's was the last one, years into that.
And Spiegel.
Yeah, Spiegel. and you know what's really funny? There's actually an industry now where people can they get a license from these companies, and they just reproduce parts of the catalog. Mm-hmm. Like I have the trains or the boys' toys or the girls' toys from. I have books where it's all Sears from 1950 to 1978 or whatever. And it would take you to a different place. You'd look at it, and a lot of times your parents would say, "Well, what do you want from Santa?" And you look at the catalog, and you'd mark the place off so they knew. But and every time you saw it, it was like different. And sometimes the products would carry over from year to year, but it would be just be an experience. And people would. They say, I got my catalog, and at that time, we lived by Ford City. So we would go and get the catalog from the catalog department. They charge $1 or $2 or $3. And we'd get the Christmas catalog, and it would be so cool to have those, and look at the things,
I think that you could go to a store, and if you bought, I didn't own like trains and all that like you did, but you could go to a store and then bring something home, and it could entertain you in your home. Whereas now it seems like you don't see that as much, and the entertainment's outside the home, the experiences. But I don't know if this is, Paul prepared this list, but I'd like to maybe give a small shout out to Berwyn Toy and Trains. And Paul goes there quite often. He tells me, I've been there a few times. And what I'd like to mention is that when, I go in there, I've gone in there with you actually a few times. I've bought gifts for people, for kids, and children and friends of friends or whatever, but relatives. But go in there. And there's a section where they have inexpensive toys. And I would go to Paul and I said, my goodness, I had this, I had that, I had this, I had that. So even for the big kid, it brings back memories of your childhood. So, I think a place like that is in a lot of ways a gold mine if people were to know about it more. And, just as silly as it sounds, I was there with you, I think, a couple months ago, and I said, well, I had that horn. That horn was on my bicycle. I had this little, I can't even think what the word was. I had that little kaleidoscope. I had that little thing that shakes. Is it a maroon? I don't know what it's called. Shakes. I had this. It just brings you back to your childhood. And for those that have mariachi, those people that have children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren, and they're buying, or for themselves. It's just an experience that people can share together. It's even an experience I had with Paul, because I says, well, my goodness, I had this, I had that, I had this, and you may want to, and actually, you've actually bought a few things that you had as a kid.
Well, the thing
it's not real expensive.
The thing that's neat about that store is they have kites in there.
They have kites,
and then they have the Breyer horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I had those.
I had them too, and they have she mentioned they've got currently now they have the ant farm, which was So it's I'm not trying to discourage anybody from going to a big box store. It's not what I'm suggesting at all.
But there's a lot of reasonably priced, unique things that you could pick up at a place like Berwyn Toy and Trades that you know, if you're looking to give a gift or even for yourself, something that not as many people have now. It's really a nice thing to go there. And there's trains and there's, you know, I've seen people bring children or big kids go there and they're just hitting the button and playing with the train. And it just takes you away from, even for a moment, of the maybe bad news you see in the, you know, media or whatever. It's just something unique to take your mind off of things and to maybe think about things you can create in your life and build positivity and enrich your life.
They have a big train layout where you could operate it. You press the buttons and the trains move around it. And then they have vintage model kits.
We actually went out about 2 years ago to, was it Elgin? Where do we go to the train store? DuPage County? Where did we go out to? The Kane County Fairgrounds or something?
We went to the train show.
Where was that?
That was at DuPage County Fairgrounds.
I was surprised I saw people I hadn't seen in years, and actually they were there, the guys from the store. So I mean, it was really it was actually a nice experience to go out to something like that. So
you know, that's an interesting thing that you bring up, because I remember, you know, my dad's been gone over 10 years now, but him and I used to go out to the train show, and it would be unique, and you'd see a grandfather or a great-grandfather, a father, and then his son.
Too.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd see whole families.
Yeah.
And then you'd see whole families, and you know, the older guys were trying to get back the metal trains, that even the Marx trains that they had when they were a kid, and the erector set. And my dad would tell me about how he had an erector set, and they would build things, and you know, I find that kind of stuff is like a time machine.
Well, these kind of toys and these kind of gadgets help people, and I'll focus with children though. Helps them. It's kind of like those scientific toys. They kind of help you use your mind, and you get a sense of accomplishment. You know, when I was smaller, I can't remember exactly what it is, but I would do, for the girls, they had the cross stitch. They had, you can make things and you know, produce something, whether it was knitting or whether it was crocheting or whether it was just something you would, you bought, actually Paul bought something a couple weeks ago, how to make a leather toolkit, right?
Oh yeah.
So I mean, things like that, it's kind of like cooking. You get a sense of accomplishment with what you've finished, or gardening or whatever.
Yeah, at Hobby Lobby, they have the handy leather kits or whatever, and you know, I would make things like, I made a holster one time, and I made a keychain, or I made a little pocket thing for a knife, you know, where you put it in a pouch or whatever, or a sheath for a knife.
It helps kids, especially children, channel their energies into something positive.
And then they have ways that you wet the leather, and then you take a stamp, and then you make a design in it, and then you dye it, and then, you know, it's all kind of a skill you learn, which kind of transfers, you know, like, to different things. You know, I like to. We've kind of covered the toys, although there was something called KB Toys that was in all the malls, and I know they were really big in selling G.I. Joe things. And I remember there was a KB Toys at Chicago Ridge Mall. This is about 40 years ago. If you went there after Christmas, they would have these train things, and they would be like 90% off. And I remember buying a rotating beacon like the one that Lionel had, and I think it was a Pico, and you know, I bought that at KB Toys, and I bought some engines at KB Toys, and you know, it would be I know they had Barbies and things like that.
But again, as I mentioned earlier, we went to a model of, you know, catalog to dime store to a little store like medium-sized store like I mentioned, Steinberg Baum, to going to um, a larger store like a Sears. And then you've also mentioned another model, the shopping mall. The shopping mall where you would have different, clothing store, a cookie store, a grocery store, and sometimes, and you would also have a ice cream store, a toy store. So then we had that model. What do you think the model is now, Paul? There's still the catalog. There's the internet.
I think a lot of people do Amazon.
But Amazon pulls from different stores.
Or eBay.
eBay gives people a chance to sell their own stuff sometimes.
The only thing is with the stores, you could actually see the product. And with the eBay and stuff, you don't. And the thing that I'm sad about is, and why I like stores like you mentioned, like Berwyn Toys and Trains and Hobby Zone and things like that, is if the item doesn't work, like you could bring it there. I hear the music, and we're going to be taking a break soon. After this, we're going to continue on with this and go into another relevant part of the experience from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and up to today.
Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring their international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at scilink.net. That's Papa Sierra Yankee Lima India November Kilo dot November Echo Tango. Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube Live channel.
Your hometown radio station since 1949. We are WRMN AM 1410 Elgin time, 1 o'clock.
For nearly 50 years, the DuPage Senior Citizens Council and Kane Senior Council have been dedicated to serving seniors in DuPage and Kane counties. Established in 1975, the DuPage Senior Citizens Council is a volunteer-driven 501c3 non-for-profit organization committed to helping older adults live with dignity. From providing nutritious meals to offering support services, the Kane Senior Council is there every step of the way. With programs designed to enhance independence and quality of life, they're proud to make a difference in the lives of their senior neighbors. To learn more or to volunteer, visit them at 418B Airport Road in Elgin or head to their website at caneseniorcouncil.org. Give them a call at 630-338-0999. That's 630-338-0999. That's the Kane Senior Council, caring for seniors because they deserve to live with dignity and respect. Visit caneseniorcouncil.org or call 630-338-0999 today.
Big bayonets, everyone. This is the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-host today, Paul Burvitt, and special co-host Dr. Marla Mutis. Every Saturday, noon to 1. This is the extended session of 1 to 2 on WRMN 1410 AM, the Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming live on WRMN 1410.com. And studio number is 847-931-1410, and you can always text us at 505-926-1410 or contact us on Facebook Live at the WRMN 1410 channel. Now, we were talking about things that were in the past that we remember from our neighborhood and our childhood, and Marla wanted to move into a little bit different aspect of it. We wanted to talk about the places we would go to, as with our friends or family, like restaurants and ice cream. Now, what do you remember? What was your favorite ice cream place to go to?
I have several.
Okay.
Obviously, well, I would say my favorite place to go to was Dove Candies in Chicago, on Pulaski, probably around 6100 South. And what I liked about Dove Candies was I actually remember going there for the fountain treats, and I actually remember I might have been 7 years old, and I remember watching them make bricks. It was to be a big brick of ice cream. The guy, the person was like a high school kid, I think, would pull out a big knife and cut the individual bricks of ice cream that were already on sticks. Take it. It was like a good pint or almost a pint, and dip it in the regular chocolate. They did the same thing with bananas. I just remember that I was able to buy, my mom and I both like nuts. My dad, not so much. But I remember it was the one place I could get black walnut ice cream, pistachio ice cream, almond ice cream, New York cherry. I think it had almonds in it or something. And it was, maple with walnut. And it was just, the time that you can get a large, we weren't worried about calories back then, right? But the time where you can get a serving of homemade topping and the real whipping cream. And I really miss that. There's some close seconds, if not almost, as good. I haven't been everywhere, but obviously that company got bought out by M&M Mars, I believe. And you see the product now, a little smaller scale, but commercial. I also remember my father mentioning to me the rainbow cone on Western. I actually drove by that yesterday. It was earlier in the morning, so I didn't get a cone, but just remembering the experience I also had there, it was unique, where you would have the higher quality ice cream And their thing was the rainbow with a little bit of each flavor, and that's gone. I won't say. I think it was bought out, the company, and I know it's been out at. It's expanded, right? It's expanded. I've seen other locations. I know I saw one. I believe it's in Orland Park. I haven't been there, but I've seen it.
One in Darien, too.
Darien. I've seen that one.
And I think they expanded to Florida too.
And so that has expanded. I also remember the Tasty Freeze, which was a soft serve that you would have in all the neighborhoods. We're from an era that was very good. We're from an era where we'd be in front of the house and a Good Humor truck would come by, and it was really good quality bars. And I guess they had other things, but and then that got bought out, and I guess it's commercial in a lot of the grocery stores. I missed that as a kid, being out playing, and you would hear the ding, 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 and everybody run out to the front, kids and big kids, to the street to get some ice cream. Other things that came about a little bit later on. I don't have all of them, but obviously the Cupid candy, that was very good as well. And I believe it's not around, at least not around this area anymore, but it was another very, very high quality homemade product, homemade syrups, homemade whipped cream, nuts, whatever you wanted, you can, and it was a nice place where you can sit. There was also another place, I think it's still open downtown. It used to be up near the Drake Hotel across the street, but it was Ghirardelli. I believe they have that now near the river as well. I haven't been there, but I believe they do. I read about it. And it's another very, very high quality ice cream place you can go to. And they also have the attractions in the down Chicago. What I liked about Ghirardelli's was the quality of the chocolate. I like caramel. I like all the flavors, but a lot of times I venture just to the hot fudge and the caramel, because I don't get ice cream every day and every week. And I usually get my favorite, although I've had other ones. Also want to give a shout out to Gertie's. And Gertie's has the best chili. Gertie's has a good experience for families to go to and even go on a date with someone. It's just really a nice experience. And the ice cream is very, very high quality. I think they have the best whipped cream out that I can find nowadays, or one of the best. And so, you can order small size. You can go to I think they call it Tummy Buster. And so they really have, I don't think they advertise as much anymore. Some of the locations have consolidated, and I know there's one out in Bridgeview that's very, very good. And I highly encourage people to go out there and do some shopping while you're out there too, because there's a lot of malls out in that area and a lot of great, great grocery stores and stuff. Another one I've been to a few times, it's excellent, is in, I believe, Palos Park is Plush Horse. And they are another one that is high quality ice cream, whipped cream, a nice experience. You see generations going there. And it's just a real good place to go and take kids. We also we haven't been to the one in Lockport, but we heard the good things about it. And another homemade place. There's also, I'd like to just have a little sidebar and a shout out to what is that place in Chicago Ridge, Paul? It's a candy store, American Candy or something. We went in there, they have popcorn, they have, what is that thing you like? Homemade frozen candy?
The freeze-dried.
Freeze-dried. It's so good, guys. I mean, I'm not a big hard candy person, but I've had it commercially at the larger big box stores. This place makes their own, and it's fairly priced. It's not that expensive, but it's just really the best I've ever had out there. Was Coca-Cola.
They had a Coca-Cola freeze-dried candy that was fantastic.
I mean, it's just I hope this thing takes off more than commercially more. I mean, it's really a a knock your socks off experience. I mean, it really is. And I think that as that business expands, you're going to see it expand maybe to even other locations. It's doing very well. But, you know, a lot of these things we mentioned, I mentioned from what I remember, Dove Candies, that started out as a little place, and then it took off commercially. What's that place, Paul, in, maybe you don't remember, in Oak Park? Peterson's Ice Cream.
Peterson's, yeah.
Peterson's Ice Cream. And I went there in the 80s and 70s, and it was just a really good, again, homemade ice cream. We haven't ventured out yet to Margie's. I think it's 1900 Northwestern, but we've heard from people it's very, very good. And there's other places too. He's not a big ice cream person.
Well, I remember going to Dove Candy.
Yeah, Dove.
And there were several around. There was the one on Pulaski.
Yeah.
But then there was one, I believe, off of Kedzie on 95th. That's the one. And what was nice is they had like a snack bar. You could eat the candy there or the ice cream there. And then there was actually one, I believe it was at the Scottsdale Mall in one of the, what do you call them, kiosk type things. It was right across from Goldblatt's. And that's where I remember seeing them have and what was neat is, she's right, this was like huge amounts of ice cream that had a stick in them, and they were hand dipped, and then they would dip them,
and the real chocolate, like you get a chocolate, you know, the Fannie Mae. It was. Well, Fannie Mae had. I don't know if they still have ice cream, do they? But Fannie Mae was good too.
Yeah,
they do.
But what I remember about those was it was just fantastic. Now, you know, you bring something up that's kind of goes into our last topic, but you know, a lot of people forget that years ago, you know, the Woolworths had snack bars, fountains, and so did Kresge's, and Kresge's was like a division of Kmart. It became Kmart, but they also had a subsidiary named Jupiter, and those were some big stores around here. But Kresge's had a snack bar at most of their locations, and so did Walgreens. And I remember my mother used to like to get apple pie, hot apple pie with they put ice cream on it and a piece of American cheese. Okay. And then what I used to like there, a little bit off the path, was they'd give you a hot dog on toast with relish and onions, and you know, it was fantastic. And you know, you could go get a lunch, do your shopping, and go to other stores. And you know, it's really an experience that, you know, now you have to go to although, you know, IKEA, they have the meatballs and stuff like that. And then, you know, you can go around, but it's not the same. It's really not the same. And you know, it was an experience. And then you and I both know there was nothing like going to Sears.
It was good.
On 63rd Street, and going down the stairs and the landing. They had the Hires root beer barrel, and then you could get a hot dog, you know, like chili cheese dog or a corn dog. And there was nothing like that. It was fantastic. And
Coney Island chili. Hang on, I'm going to show them because I have them.
Yeah.
Hang on, guys. That chili I used to get at Sears.
Yeah.
I never experienced it again for like 30, 40 years. But one day I was out at the store and I actually decided to buy, sorry, I'm leaving, guys. I actually decided to buy some commercial chili. And this Coney Island, and we're not getting paid for this, but this Coney Island national brand at Walmart, this is just like what I had when I was a kid at Sears. It's that good. And it brings back memories of my childhood. And it was a good time where, like Paul said, you would go out and you would go to a store, and then they would have a little food thing and a food area, and it would just be a unique experience for people that brought children or for people that were just hungry. it gave you an option to take a little side break before you did your shopping. And I think people would buy more, actually, or at least spend more time in the store. And we see that maybe in the real big box, I don't know if you call those shoot stores big box, but those real big stores have it, but they're not to the extent that we would remember that you would, you might get that hot dog and then just run out.
Well, even at Zaire, I remember the Zaire on Columbus over here, and also the one over here on 79th and Harlem. That's the first time I ever had pizza. They sold cheese pizza by the slice. And I remember that, the
corn dogs.
Yeah, or corn dogs. And I remember the first time I ever had pizza was at a Zaire. It was huge. It was a huge piece of pizza, and it was a triangular slice, and you could get a soda, and you're talking, that was fantastic, and you don't see that much anymore. I know that some Home Depots and stuff have hot dogs and stuff like that, but
it's all these places. They're not. They're not making it a large attraction, whereas it was a large.
And that's an atmosphere, It's like a niche, and it's an atmosphere, I mean, and then it was Walgreens too. I remember when I was a child, we used to go to 47th and Ashland, and Walgreens had a restaurant there, and you could get a T-bone steak, believe it or not.
Steak at Walgreens?
Yeah, and they had a curled carrot and a baked potato and a little bit of coleslaw and a soda, and the steak was $1.99. And I used to love that steak, and my mother would take me there on a Saturday or something like that, or during the summer, and I remember it, every time they had like planters between the seats, and they had those fake flowers, but they always had a picture of Chicago up, like Grant Park. This was years ago, with the band shell, and these were just memories that I have as a child. And so the food was really good, and it was in the corner of the Walgreens down right on 47th and Ashland, and you can't beat things like that, or even the memories of things like that. Now, locally, there was that David's restaurant at 31st and Halsted. There was the Driftwood at 47th and Pulaski. Most recently, the place that we kind of liked was Petey's Bungalow. There were two of them. One in Oak Lawn across from Christ Hospital, and the other one was on 159th and LaGrange. And Petey's just closed about a year ago, but it brought back memories. It was one of the few places you could go to that reminded you of old times. And then, not so in the not so distant past, but yet in the distant past, you had Poppin' Fresh Pies, and those were at the places that then became Baker Square. And you could get pies there, and a lot of people. I had a partner when I was working for the state's attorney's office. She used to always put an order in for her family at Thanksgiving for Baker Square because they like French silk and other pies. Sadly, those places are gone now.
What about Fasano on 65th?
Fasano was fantastic, right?
Dressel's cakes and all that.
And then I'm sure you remember Ed the Bevics, right? It came up in the 80s. It was kind of like a diner concept of the 50s, but and there was actually a place in Orland like that too, that had that, and it was like a diner place that it reminded you of the 1950s, and you could see celebrities in there.
Well, Fasano's, I believe they still sell at one of the local.
I think they sell them on trucks or things like that.
And also Wolf's Bakery is at the Wolf in Evergreen Park.
That's still
They
there.
make a Dressel's. They used to make a Dressel's cake if you asked them.
Yeah, Wolf's Bakery is very good.
So I mean, you're seeing. I don't know if they're relatives or somebody. I believe they are. The family took off. Maybe they don't want the big company like it used to be, but they still have it offered locally for people that remember that kind of stuff like us. And I guess they do very well.
And I remember one of my favorite places downtown was the Garland Cafe in the Garland building, which was on the 7th floor. And it was called Heaven on 7. There'd be
I went there with my dad.
Yeah, there'd be a line, and they, they'd have the thing I liked best was in certain seasons they have the soft shell crab poor boy sandwich with cornbread and etouffee stuff. It was fantastic. And then, before, well, Pepe's was around, but before these other places, you had Chi-Chi's. I remember getting a chili chimanga there, which is kind of like a burrito, and that was fantastic. And then, did you ever go to the Ground Round?
All the time.
Yeah, did you like it?
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
French fries.
What else did you guys
and the
get
hamburger.
there? You had the hamburgers?
Quite often. I was there several times. Hamburgers and fries and probably chili.
The place
grilled onions for me all the time.
The place that I liked was Little Eddie's, and
grilled onions again.
They
were on 50.
They were on 50th
and Pulaski.
Yeah, 59th area.
59th and
at Pulaski, and they had the best chili dogs, and then they had the best beef sandwiches, and then cheeseburgers. And you like Tony's beef, right? It was about a mile up the road from there. They were a fantastic place. And then, when Walgreens kind of like separated from their restaurant, they had an independent place called Wags. And I remember there was one over there on about 104th and Cicero. And then there was one on 79th and Cicero. And then there was one on Belmont and Harlem. And there was the Wags restaurant, which was really kind of cool. It was like a full service restaurant, but it was under the way. Now, you went to Chicken Unlimited, right?
Quite often.
What do you remember about the Chicken Unlimited?
I remember that people would go there and either eat in or take out. And what food I remember the most? Well, I remember that they would give you a piece of chicken or two, and you can get French fries, corn, or cornbread. And I like their little fried pies. They have apple pies. What did you get?
Now,
fish.
It came in a box.
It came in a paper box.
Yeah, and then they would give you a biscuit.
A biscuit.
And you asked for a honey packet, right? And then I liked the mashed potatoes with gravy and the little styro thing.
I've had them,
and the coleslaw. Okay, that was fantastic. And you're right. You could get it in a 2 or a 3-piece box, whatever you want. And it had a box in there, and it was said Chicken Unlimited. And then that was really cool. And then not so much so, but there was another place in the area called Chicken Delight, which I really never
been there.
I never went there either, but that was a thing. And then now you remember this, because I know we've talked about this to other people. Shakey's Pizza.
Oh yeah, I went there for my 10th birthday.
And what do you remember about Shakey's?
Birthday. It was very lit, very well lit. It was West Cicero Avenue, about 300 South, if around that. And I remember as a kid, I would go there, and I think there might have been a little bar in the back. But one thing I remember was the player piano, because I had never seen a player piano other than I think at some museum one time. And you just go there. There were tables, and it was just a nice experience. Might have been my 9th birthday, but I went there when I was very young. Do they still have those? I think
I don't know.
Not over there. They don't, but not in that location. But it was my one of my first experiences to an entertainment place for kids, and I thought that.
They dressed with the all-time.
It wasn't just the
1890s clothing.
It wasn't just the food; it was the music and the. I remember people would banjos
Exactly.
and red and white stripe.
And they had suspenders on.
Yeah.
And maybe a garter thing on their sleeve.
Yeah, it took you to an era that, again, I used to watch some older movies, so I may have seen that in older movies, and I thought, well, this is really nice. But I did go there, and it was a good experience.
Now, you remember a couple of doors down, and I have to say, I only went here once. And I went here once.
I've been there, Ponderosa.
Yeah, in June of 1971, because we bought our house, and my father and I were moving stuff, and he took me. We went to the Ponderosa Steakhouse, which later became Bonanza, and
then
Matson's, and that was kind of a cool thing. Now, I used to see him all the time, but I really never went there. Did you ever go to Prince Castle?
I've never heard of it.
It was kind of like a knockoff of White Castle, where, White Castle was white. Prince Castle had these looked like sandstone, and they
I've
had.
driven by it actually, but I've never been in there. Are they still in existence?
No, I don't believe they are. And then the place that we talked about at the Ford City Mall was the Harvest House.
I was there quite often.
What do you remember about that?
I remember that we would go shopping in the mall, and I remember that, the food. I remember they had a lot of homemade. It was cafeteria, but the food was cafeteria style, but it was just like all homemade. From chicken to mashed potatoes to pasta to macaroni and cheese to cake pudding. They had everything. I could basically live there if it was just really good. And what was good about it is that you could go anytime within reason the mall was open. Maybe they would open at 11 or close an hour before the mall closed, but you could just walk in and get, if you wanted a cup of soup.
Now, that was the place next to Woolworths,
It was next to Woolworths.
And they had a kind of a vestibule that you could go to the Woolworths or right out into the mall. Now, I remember
there was one outside.
I remember going there several times. And actually, before I moved by Ford City, we were living in Mount Greenwood, my mother. I remember that there was also a cafeteria type thing or a snack shop at J.C. Penney.
Yeah, I went there too. I remember I got ice cream there.
That was the first time I ever had a Reuben sandwich. That was really something. So I want to go double back a little bit. We talked about Marshall Fields, all that. I'd like to talk about E.J. Corvettes. Do you remember E.J. Corvettes?
Very well.
What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember some great things. The first thing that comes to mind, though, is quite sad, that tornado in Oakland. Yeah. There's a picture on the internet that shows it. I guess the most famous picture of the tornado in Oakland. What year was that tornado? 67. Yeah, I remember it actually. One of the most famous pictures shows the funnel, and then there's the Corvette store. But regarding shopping at Corvettes, I put it sort of kind of like the way Goldblatt's was. It was a discount, not discount, but it was a store where you can get a lot of things for your house, everyday products, and then did they have furniture there?
They did.
Yeah. I was smaller than when I was younger when that came about.
The first floor of Corvettes was mostly clothing, as I recall.
Okay.
And then you'd walk in, and then the children's section was to the right. And
okay.
I remember for years they had a little like army uniform, and the thing, and you could get a little kid's army uniform. But then you went upstairs, you took the escalator up, and on the second floor they had toys, appliances, and bicycles, and camera stuff. And a lot of people I know that are into photography got their first taste of photography from the upstairs. And I remember a couple of things, they used to have these big display cases, which were in glass, kind of like that Toys R Us thing, but in glass. And or a bargain top. But you press the button and you said, I want this. I got a lot of what they call tin plate, helicopters, police cars, friction-powered police cars. And I remember when Hot Wheels came out in '67, it was real hard to get them. So I got a Johnny Lightning set, which was very similar. It had track, and I got one of my favorite bicycles there. I had a 10-speed West German Jaguar bicycle. I gave it to my cousins. I wish I had it now. It's worth like thousands and thousands of dollars. But
I had the original Barbie, and I don't have it anymore. I had two of them, actually.
Yeah,
so, we didn't keep things. A lot of us.
I still have my original G.I. Joes, but I wish you would have your Barbies. Those are a nice thing.
Yeah.
Now, Corvettes, I recall, had several stores. They were in other states too, but they had one in Oak Lawn and one at North Riverside, where I think it became Carson Peary Scott, which is also gone. And then I remember they had an optical department there because I had a cousin who was married to an optometrist that worked at the one in Rockford, I believe. Okay. So, and then the other one I know because you have fond memories of it.
Zaire.
Yeah, Zaire.
Yeah.
Zaire was like a big department store, and then there was one on 74th in Columbus,
There's one in Harlem.
87th in Harlem. There was one in Des Plaines. There was one in Franklin Park. There was one in Joliet, Markham, and later there was one by Midway Airport. And then Zaire became Ames, and then they operated for a few years. And you wouldn't believe this now, but do you know what Ames is?
I may what?
It's now TJ Maxx, and Marshalls, and Home Goods.
Paul has another really fond memory of Zaire, because what did you get across the street from Zaire?
Across the street, it's a trailer park now, but it was a farm, and I got my dog Jet there.
His first dog.
Yeah, we got Jet there, and that was kind of cool. So, I always said he's a farm dog, and your dog was from a farm too, right?
In Indiana.
In Indiana. So Zaire,
Rockville,
Indiana. We went down there once to try to see where he was born at. So I know where Jet was born at. It's a gas station now in a trailer park. So I think of that all the time. So then Zaire's became Ames. Okay. Oh, and then there was a Zaire on 111th.
Right.
Right across from near the train tracks over there. So on 111th between Cicero and Oak Park Avenue. Mm-hmm. And then the other place that I remember was Community Discount Centers. And it was kind of a cool place. I remember there was one which later...
It was called Community. I remember something Community.
Yeah. It was,
I don't think it had a signed discount center.
It was Community Discount Center. And Community became, in some way... Well, it may have been Shoppers World before that.
Uh-huh.
But there was one that we used to go to all the time at 47th and Halsted. And then there was one at Midway. And the one at Midway is cool because I saw the Black Beauty car. That was the car that the Green Hornet used.
Okay.
And it was in front of the Community. And what we remarked as, there were no handles on the outside of the car. So you had to kind of reach in. There was a solenoid, and it was kind of a 60s thing. And then there was a Community, which now I think is a Staples or Office Depot or something, on 95th and Cicero.
Okay.
Then Shoppers World was that place at 95th and Cicero, and I think it was, there were others. And then there was another kind of a discount store called Terry's.
I remember that.
And the Terry's over here later became the Chicago Ridge Mall, okay? And I remember when we would go out to the forest preserves, primarily Maple Lake, we would drive down 95th Street and always stop at Terry's. And it was kind of a neat discount store. It's kind of something that you normally wouldn't see. Now, this other one, I know that you have quite an experience with, Weebles, right? You worked at Weebles, didn't you?
Part-time.
Yeah. Did you like Weebles?
Yes. I can't say anything I didn't like about it. mall where I worked, and they actually had a snack bar as part of the experience too, the shopping experience. They had their own little snack bar up the stairs. But yeah, I enjoyed it. They had a lot of.
And they had a grocery store, Hellman's, and then
S&H green stamps too.
In the basement. That's one of my favorite places. Was you could redeem the
Where
green.
Where did you get the green stamps?
You got them at National, National Tea. Okay. And then A&P had another one. They were gold stamps. Yeah. And then they had kind of like a Scottish.
And you would get it. Explain for the viewers what S.H. green stamp was.
Well, when you bought so much in groceries, there was a machine above. Later on, there was a machine above, and say it was $50. They would put their finger kind of like a dial, and stamps for $50 would come out, and they'd hand them to you. Okay, and then they gave you books. And after you had so many books, you could redeem them for things like I still have
a toaster.
I still have a little, which we went to with our friend Lewis and Naomi. We went to a antique store. I have a little stand in my bathroom that I got with S&H green stamps. And when we went into the resale shop store, the antique store, it was like $100. So I have some, and in my room, I have a swan lamp that I actually fixed the socket on, and it's lit up, it's backlit, and it's a swan, and I got that at S&H green stamps. So I still have some of the things from S&H green stamps, and you would get these booklets, and you would redeem them, and all you would have to do would be to pay the taxes on it.
Is that the only place you know of that offered stamps like that?
I don't know where you would. S&H stood for Sperry and Hutchinson, and there was another redemption place off of 111th and Western. We went to there a couple of times too.
I think what I was trying to ask was, do you remember any other companies that would give you stamps and you would redeem it? Not S&H.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
There was the A&P had the gold stamps. I don't know where
you could get dishes at the grocery store.
Right. That was
right?
And then certain gas stations offered blue stamps. I understand, but I don't know too much about that. And then we talked a little bit about Kresge's, and I found this kind of amazing. I went to Canada in the 1980s. And there was a place called the Scarborough Mall, and they had a Kresge's in there, and it was remarkable because it reminded me of the Kresge's that were here. Now, I have fond memories of that Kresge's in Scottsdale, because the day after Christmas, which was my dad's birthday, I would always go with my Christmas money and go to the Kresge's.
Where were they by?
They were in
same side as Goldbug?
They were next to William A. Lewis. All right.
In Scottsdale?
In Scottsdale Mall.
Oh, okay. I understand. It has.
Yeah.
It just doesn't go straight. It's got a.
It kind of angled. Yeah. Okay. And it was next to. It was next to William A. Lewis, and we would go there the day after Christmas, and I would take my Christmas money, and I've commented this on my YouTube channel. They would have Lionel trains. I'm talking 73, 74. They would have Lionel trains, and they would be half price. And you could get a great Lionel train for like $15 or $18. And you get the whole train set in a box with the transformer and the track. And granted, it was what they call their MPC era, which was post-war, but they got taken over by MPC Plastics Company. But some people consider them a downgrade, but that it's got its own unique charm to it. But I got two train sets there. I remember they would be on the top, and they would be facing you, and one was like $12 or $18. The other one was like $15. I got them 2 years in a row, and I'll never forget that. Was very happy with that. And then there was also a Kresge's, which became Jupiter, in the Green Oak Shopping Center on 95th Street. And then I think there was a Kresge's also in Hometown, which was that one stuck around a long time, and that was kind of next to the Colony grocery store, so that was kind of neat. And then as McCrory's was another kind of a dime store, discount store, and I know there was one in Brighton Park, I believe. And then, did you ever go to McDade's?
Yes.
Yeah, McDade's was kind of unique, and
Is that by where Corvettes was?
No, it was right
Where
here. That's service merchandise. It's kind of like service merchandise.
On 95th Street?
Yeah, 95th Street.
Yeah, I've been there.
Where that medical center is. Yeah, McDade's was, you looked at a catalog, and then you wrote down the number, you entered it into a computer or whatever, and they would tell you if they had it, and then they would bring it down a conveyor.
It was items like toasters or jewelry, or I didn't really go there that much, but I got a telescope. Probably.
I got a radio there. Yeah. I got a my golf clubs, which are very expensive now. Jack Nicklaus Golden Bear. I got those there, and I got actually a primitive type of adding machine where it had wheels, and then you added it, and it would do calculations. So that was kind of cool. And then, did you ever go to Gately's?
I believe that maybe, but I recall that they were near Bremerton.
There was a Gately's there.
I bought something online from Gately's, but I didn't. I may have gone once.
Gately's was big in Roseland, and they were big in Blue Island. It was kind of like a Goldblatt's type thing.
A little higher.
Yeah. But they were big stores in the area, and they kind of vitalized South suburban areas, and they were. But what was cool is they actually had a football stadium where a lot of Chicago public schools played. It was the Gately Stadium. They sponsored it. So Gately's was kind of a big place, and then Goldblatt's.
Every week.
Yeah.
Every week you go to Goldblatt's.
Goldblatt's, I knew the one on 47 and Ashland, and Goldblatt's sold everything. They had multiple stores. They had an elevator. They had elevator operators.
Soap, tissue.
Women's clothing, children's clothing. And then you went to the basement, and there was a snack bar down there. There was a deli. And actually, there was a pet shop where I got my canary from.
Yeah.
And they would, it was kind of weird. They walked into a room, and then they would get the bird, and then they would put them in a box.
And see if you got along with them?
And they give them to you. You tell them, I want that bird. And it was kind of like whatever they could get.
You wanted that one, but he flew away.
Yeah, it was kind of like...
I want to bring up a really great... Well, you didn't mention G. Lumber either, but... the other thing is the Goldblatt Home Center was like the best of the best. I still have a little bit of the furniture, but pieces. But to me, they were the highest quality furniture you can get in the neighborhood at the time. I mean, it was really, it was sort of like a mini Marshall Fields. It was just really good quality, and so they opened up probably 1970. 71, and I mean, I don't know when they eventually closed. I would say late 80s, mid 80s, maybe. People would come from all around to go there. I mean, you bought things there.
Yeah, I did, furniture, and Goldblatt's had stores in Illinois, Michigan, I believe, Indiana, and Wisconsin. And they were, it was a major retailer, and they had the big Goldblatt store was on State Street too, remember? And they had very nice. Now my grandmother had a store on a couple of blocks away in, and it was like a kind of a neighborhood grocery store. And her competition was Goldblatt's actually during the Depression, but my grandmother got the contract to distribute food during the Depression, so that's what kind of kept them alive. because Goldblatt's would always undercut everybody because they had volume. But
That's what the regular stuff. The furniture wasn't that.
no, the furniture wasn't like that. And then a store that I liked that they don't talk too much of, and it was in the same area that was by Service Merchandise in Oak Lawn, in the same area as was W.T. Grant's. Did you ever go there?
Maybe once or twice.
Yeah, I like W.T. Grant's. It was like kind of like a Woolworth's, but I think they had a snack bar too. But I remember getting some really neat models and stuff at W.T. Grant's, and they always had a display with marks, like Johnny West and the Cherokee Indians and things like that, and they were kind of like a big thing. And then I did not know this. I didn't know this until I was doing some research about a crime years ago. But there were Western auto places in Chicago, and I always thought they were out west. But Western Auto is unique because they were kind of like a major retailer, and then they would have their own line of things, and they would even sell firearms, and they would sell trains. They would do special trains from Marx and Lionel. So there were Western Auto places in Chicago. And then you remember Robert Hall? Yeah. That was a men's clothing store. And then that's where I used to get my suits. They were across from Little Company of Mary Hospital.
Well, we've only got about 8 minutes, and I think that I'm looking at your list here, Paul. I don't think we could finish this thing without talking about Brabeck's department store.
Yeah,
because that was a biggie when we were growing up.
Originally,
Polk Brothers.
Originally, when I was a kid, they were on 59th and Damon, and then they moved to around 55th and California.
You would never know what you were going to see in the store. I mean, what would he get? Overruns, or what would he get?
He got a lot.
Would be there.
When we lived in Chicago, we lived at 1920 West Garfield Boulevard in an apartment building on the second floor, and they didn't have tile. They had what they call linoleum.
Yeah.
And he would sell rolls of linoleum.
We bought that.
And he would have installers. They would install it for you. And, he was big on selling linoleum and housewares. And he had stoves,
fabric
stoves, refrigerators. He had things like that.
But you would go in there periodically, and you never know what you would find.
Yeah.
And he was a very nice man. I remember that as when I was growing up. I think we went to the other location one other time, but we used to go to, where was the one I went to? On 47th Street?
Yeah, 47th.
And what? It was east.
It was 47th and Damon.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually it was 51st and Damon, probably.
I think it was.
And then, of course, we talked about Woolworths. That's unfortunately no longer here. And then they had a big box component called Woolco, which went to EJ Corvettes after Corvettes closed there in Oak Lawn. And then there was a store that I liked. It was around 48th and Ashland called Neisner's. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like the Archer Avenue Big Store, things like that. They had a downstairs. And all the stuff I liked was downstairs. It was the kids' stuff, and then the housewares, like the, stuff for like tools and stuff like that. And I very often, my mother would get me really Marx play sets, like of the Alamo or, Big Jim, Jungle Jim or whatever. And they were $1.99.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Out of all these stores and experiences you've mentioned, which you think is the one that you missed the most, and that had the most impact on you? You mentioned a lot of different experiences, a lot of different places.
Well, we didn't
wish if you could bring time back, and you could go.
I like the concept of the variety store or the five and dime. I think those.
Like a Steinberg bomb type?
No, I'm talking about like Woolworths, Kresge's, J&R Variety, like by your house. And then where I lived on 55th near Ashland, there was F&S Variety. They were all the same concept. They were varieties. There's F&S stood for father and son. I don't know what J&R stood for, but you would
I
find
used to know, but I don't know now.
You would find really, in some ways, high quality products. Like they would have women's clothing at J&R Variety. They would have nice crystalware. They would have sewing supplies for school. You could get lampshades. You could get oilcloth. They had cards. They had a note. Glass coffee pots, percolators.
Maybe some of what you mentioned you don't see people use as much anymore.
No,
maybe that's why some of it.
But what it did was it gave you a look into things that you normally wouldn't see. Like there was also the same block, I think, which was Brabeck's. Woolies was over there, and so was Pixie's. Pixie's was a 2-floor store over there on 55th.
And if you were to bring back, and I know you're not big into ice cream, but an ice cream shop and maybe a restaurant a concept that you'd like to see be brought back, what would you think you'd like?
Well, the restaurant, I would like a Petey's again, something like that, or the ice cream shop, kind of like what you said, Dove Candy. Although I like Gertie's. I think that's a great concept.
I miss the cafe. I miss all of it actually, but I really miss two things. And one thing we haven't touched on, I'll bring that up in a second. But I really miss the Harvest House concept because you could be out at the mall at your time, and you can get a meal anytime you want. It was pretty good. I also, and I don't remember the name of this place, and maybe our viewers who are similar in age to us would remember in Evergreen Park in the late 60s, early 70s. They had and you never went to it, but it was a smorgasbord across from a little company in Mary Hospital. They had people at the door coming in. And I do want to give a shout out to the only concept I can think of right now that's even halfway similar is Red Apple Buffet in Norwood Park.
Well, it's Chicago, but it's not that way.
Chicago, I'm sorry. And, the buffet where you can get, a lot of good food at a reasonable price, a comfortable atmosphere, open certain hours. But I like that concept of having that in a mall. And I also like the concept of the all you can eat and the variety you can have. And then you mentioned also a supper club. We forgot to mention the what's that one in Oak Forest? Jack Gibbons Gardens.
Jack Gibbons is great. Yeah.
There's some other good ones out there, just as good that we haven't been to, but it's just the concept of like Paul likes.
Well, Dennis, thank you for commenting, and we're coming to an end. Join us next week again. We're glad we had this 2 hours to reminisce with you. We hope that you all like it. And thank you for joining Chief Guard of the Republic. And Mike will be back next week. And thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
At Britain's Touchless Car Wash, they know life gets busy. That's why